It is Saturday morning. Thank you for joining us here on Power Talk Radio, 1460 and 101 FM. Big weekend around the Monterey Bay Area. It is Car Week. This is the big weekend of the Car Week. Last couple of days, we have the concours out at Pebble Beach this weekend and the races at Laguna Seca. Lots going on. And I know where you are, Louis. You can hear the race cars over the track there. And wake you up in the morning?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's, starting, I think, Wednesday or Thursday, whenever they started doing the cars on the tracks, you can hear them right from my house.
The historic races have always been my favorite event, not only at Laguna Seca annually, but also of the Car Week. I've always thought that was just the greatest. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the cars that are at the races at Laguna Seca, they're old cars, but they're not just any old car. Like, when they have the GT350s racing, right? Those old muscle cars. You can't just go buy a GT350 that's been restored and take it out there and race it in those races. Number one, you got to be invited by Steve Earle, General Racing. And number two, your car has to be an actual racing car from back in the days that raced professionally and competitively. Wow, I didn't know that. Yeah, no, these are all cars that have a racing pedigree. Every single one of them it's not just an old car. It's a racing car that had a racing pedigree. For those that are in the know that go out there to the historic races, that's what makes those races so much fun, is to see those vehicles again in their element doing what they were built to do. And I think it was probably 20 years ago that one of the honorees at the races was Juan Manuel Fangio, the great Formula One driver, right? And Fangio had won 5 Formula One championships in 5 different cars, which was an incredible feat. No one had ever done that before or since.
Wow.
And he was about 80 years old at the time, and they brought him back to honor him. And I think it was the last car that he had won his last Formula One championship in. That car still existed, and they brought that car out, and he drove it around the track for about 10 laps and did some parade laps for the crowd. But actually, the last few laps, as he got more comfortable on the track, the old juices started to flow again, and he started racing that thing around. And just to the thrill of the crowd there, who understood the significance of this man and what his career represented and what those cars meant. It was an incredible highlight. Of all the years that I worked at Laguna Seca, that was probably the biggest highlight. That right there, seeing Fangio out on the track one more time.
Wow, that must have been special.
Yeah. The other one that was pretty good was when we talk about these racing cars, I think it was the following year, they had a recreation of a race between, and I want to say it was George Fulmer and A.J. Foyt, I think. I know it was Fulmer was one of them, and maybe Foyt was the other. But anyway, they had raced against each other at Watkins Glen in 1971, and I think Fulmer beat Foyt in that race. And here they were pitted again at Laguna Seca 25 years later in the same exact cars that they raced against each other in. And the historic races are 10 laps. Each one is 10 laps, and there were probably maybe 25 or 30 cars in this particular race. And after the first couple laps, the other drivers could see that, hey, wait a minute, these two old professional racers have got a score to settle. They're racing. They're not just going to do parade laps. These guys are going for it. So the rest of the field, they just hung back. They just moved over and made room for these two guys to take over and race again like it was 25 years earlier.
Wow.
And I think this time Foyt beat Fulmer. The race turned out the other way around. That was a big thrill, too. That was pretty darned exciting.
Well, it looks like we've seen some special racing here at Laguna Seca.
Yeah, well, that's why the historics are really a neat event, because there are a few of the old-time race car drivers that are invited out there. They come out and they run in their old cars, and so it's just a special moment. So anybody who's a racing fan, a motorsports fan, you can't miss the historics at Laguna Seca every year, because it is the finest historic race in the world. There isn't one anywhere in this country or anywhere else that rivals what they're able to do at Laguna Seca at that race annually. That's my commercial for the race cars this weekend, Louis.
Well, I will be sure to try to get out there then to enjoy it.
Well worth the time and effort to get out there. All right, so we're talking about technology on this program, and the good, bad, and the ugly, and the funny. And there was something that came up this week called cyber flashing, and the tech section of Business Insider has a story about the latest trend. We don't know if it's going to be a trend, but it could be. you, but it's something called cyber flashing. What are we dealing with here?
Well, we've heard many stories about people who send unsolicited texts to people, with pictures attached of maybe parts of their body that nobody really wants to look at. But generally, you know where it's coming from, right? Because it's a text, and you can trace back who sent you the information. You can at least know their cell phone number that they used to send you the text. But this cyber flashing is kind of an interesting take on that. It happened to a lady who was on a public transportation, and she was, just sitting there, and all of a sudden her iPhone flashed at her, and she looked down, and there was a picture of a man's...
His private parts.
It's private parts.
Oh, my goodness.
And she's like, what is going on here? Well, she immediately deleted it, and then another picture showed up. And she was wondering how it happened, and it turns out that somebody was making use of a feature of her iPhone called AirDrop.
What is AirDrop?
AirDrop is an application that Apple created to allow people to share information without necessarily having to email it or use some other cumbersome method of sharing pictures or some other information. Basically, if you have AirDrop installed on your iPhone, and you enable it with certain settings, then you can send things to people who are nearby that also have AirDrop.
Oh.
And the idea is that, you're just sending it to your friend. Hey, can you send me that picture? Sure. Here, turn on AirDrop. Let me send it to you. The problem is that one of the default settings for AirDrop is how it behaves, and it defaults to everyone.
Oh, dear.
That anybody who's near you that has AirDrop installed can send you information if it's turned on.
Okay.
And so that's what happened with this lady. She had her AirDrop service turned on, and somebody nearby was just kind of trolling to see who had AirDrop on, I'm sure, and then decided to send the stuff to her because she was nearby. Who knows how many other people nearby had it turned on as well.
Right.
But she was the only one that complained about it. And it just kind of shows how technology, no matter how useful it is and how good it is at making our lives easier, can also be used for goofy things. If somebody decides that, I found a way to kind of screw around with people and do something that they may not even want to be part of.
So the next natural question in this conversation is, how does one protect themselves from receiving unsolicited photos, which I imagine come to you anonymously? It doesn't necessarily show Luis Alvarez sent this through AirDrop.
Yep, it's completely anonymous, and it just kind of shows up, and you can accept or decline it. In her case, she declined it, but to accept or decline it, you still have to see the picture that got sent to you, so it's not like, she has to look at it. It's there.
Right.
First and foremost, if you have AirDrop installed, turn it off if you're not using it. Make sure that you disable it. It's easy to just go into the AirDrop app and turn it off. And when you do turn it on, use it for whatever purpose you need it for, and then turn it off again.
Okay.
Otherwise, you are just going to you might be another victim in the future of somebody giving you unsolicited pictures.
I understand there's also a setting on there for contacts only, so that you can have AirDrop activated on your phone, but you can restrict it to only the people that are on your contact list in your phone, and that way you won't receive any unauthorized, photos from just anybody sending them out there.
That's true. By enabling that feature, at least you'll know, because if you have contacts only, it'll tell you who's sending it as well.
Okay. And this is on the iPhone platform, so it would be available from iPhone 4 on up?
If you're running iOS 7 or later, and it could be on your iPhone, your iPad, iPod Touch, and even a Mac can run AirDrop. So just check to see if you have the app installed and make sure the settings are where you want them to be.
Hey, I ran across another interesting tech story today as I was looking on our website, powertalk1460.com. It has to do with hacking of gas pumps. Not the type of hacking that we've talked about before, where they go in and they steal PIN numbers, credit cards and PIN numbers and so forth by putting in like a card reader. But this is just a way that, say they want to buy gasoline and they don't want to pay for it. They want access to be able to pump gas. And apparently the security on these electronic gas pumps isn't very good. So now hackers are able to get inside a number of these and actually activate the pumps and fill up their tank for nothing.
Yeah, I heard about this happening in particular with commercial pumps. pumps. You see those commercial stations throughout cities where companies that pay a fee to pump up their big rigs or, other commercial vehicles are only the folks that use these pumps. But they can be hacked, and so if you have a way to get into it, you can just steal as much gas as you want.
So pumps apparently have something called a gas monitoring system, which is basically an unprotected, internet-connected system. How about that? And according to Chuck Ferguson, who owns Sutter Networks, a security company, he says if there's a computer in there, it definitely can be hacked. Earlier this year, researchers conducted experiments with fake gas pots to see what hackers would do to the system. While many just renamed the pump, some of those internet-connected systems are open to something much more nefarious, and they can actually cause the fuel to come out of the pump by itself or mess with the gauges to where the system thinks that it's at a level that it may not be. And, of course, the on and off in selecting the grade of fuel. And
wow.
Researchers found pumps in the U.S. were most at risk, totaling 44% of hacker attacks during their experiments. How about that?
Well, we've talked about how the Internet of Things, this world of connected devices, everything from gas pumps to your TV set and your DVD player and anything else you have in your house that's connected to the Internet, really presents a huge security issue because most of these devices are not protected in the least. They're really designed for ease of use and convenience, and security is the last thing that anybody thinks about. So, when you connect your TV to your Wi-Fi network, that device is actually reaching out to the manufacturer periodically to update information, perhaps download a firmware upgrade, because really, TVs now are more computer than they are screen. But that communications could theoretically be hacked, and then all of a sudden somebody has access to your network and access to all the devices on that network.
So, for example, I could have a wireless Wi-Fi in my house, like a wireless router, and it has all sorts of protection on it, right? I have all the security updated on that. But let's say I have a Roku box connected to it, and maybe the Roku box doesn't have the proper protection protocols. Somebody could get in to my network that way?
Yeah, well, basically what happens is you connect up your Roku box and you do all the right things. You have, encryption set up on your Wi-Fi, WPA, and you put in your code and everything else. So now that box is securely connected to your Wi-Fi network. The problem is that box, once it's securely connected, if it dials home and that connection back home gets hacked, it's just a tunnel right back into your network. And since now it's authorized to be on your network, it'll see everything else that's on your network. These devices, the reason they connect up to your Wi-Fi network and your home network is usually so that they can communicate back to the mothership to figure out whether they need to be updated or provide additional services. Or my Apple TV device just the other day said, hey, there's a new firmware upgrade. Do you want to install it? Obviously, the reason it knew that was it reached out to apple.com and was told there's a new firmware upgrade. Do you want to go ahead and download it? But that communications can theoretically be hacked. And that's kind of, remember a few weeks ago we talked about the car that got hijacked by some hackers, and that's basically what they did. They tapped into that communications where that car was communicating back to some Chrysler data center to provide some information about it could have been telemetry, it could have been anything, but that was unencrypted, and those guys were able to tap into it using very, very simple tools.
So this is like putting a brand new steel door as a front door on your house, which is great and secure, but then just having screen doors around the rest of the house.
Yeah, or having all the other doors unlocked.
Yeah.
Once you think that you're protected, but really you're not.
All right, interesting stuff. Talking with Luis Alvarez today, CEO of the Alvarez Technology Group. It's alvareztg.com on the web. @AlvarezTG is the Twitter handle. And Luis, the toll-free number for the I-Team.
Give us a call at 866-78-I-Team. That's 866-784-8326.
All right, Luis, have a great weekend. I guess you'll probably be out at the Concours, Pebble Beach on Sunday.
On Sunday, absolutely. Looking forward to it. It's going to be a beautiful day.
Going to go buy that $1 million car?
Not this time. I have so many other $1 million cars. I don't need another one.
Yeah, you have to spend most of your time polishing them, right?
Exactly.
Just don't need another one. You don't need another one to polish. Well, have a great weekend, and we'll chat again next week.
All right, take care.
You too.
All right, take care.
You too.
All right.